And I don't know if there's a time limit, but, you know, they already got their money, they probably don't care.
I think Casey talked with them a little bit too.
Because that's just atrocious.
Well, it's a lot of money.
It is.
I don't pretend to know exactly what should have happened or should not have happened.
We are live. I would remind all members to speak into the microphone.
I will call this meeting to order. I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Behrens?
Here.
Mr. Christensen?
Present.
Mr. Walter, absent excused. Mr. Popa?
Present.
3 present.
Approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions?
They look okay to me.
Scott can't be here, but he said he's available by phone, and he left this with me with regard to a bench.
You want to add a quick discussion about the bench then?
Yes, unless it fits into an existing category.
No, let's make it number 1A. Just squeeze it in there since you got that document. Unless I hear an objection, I'll accept the agenda as approved consensus.
So move.
Second.
Okay, approval of minutes.
You didn't vote.
Oh,
You seconded.
They have to vote when there's a change to an agenda, especially.
pardon me?
If there's a change to the agenda, you gotta have a motion. and vote.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment.
The number to call in for public comment is 231-256-8109. I don't believe anyone's watching.
Okay, we'll move on to then approval of minutes. I read them. I didn't find any issue with them.
They look okay by me.
I move we approve the minutes.
Popa seconds it.
No discussion that I hear. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, Steve, did Scott have specific information? I've got some about the bench.
There is the standard bench that he orders, and he could order that at any time and get it coming. It's we use these at Miles Kimberly. I buy wood here. Let me know which one, and I'll get it coming, Scott. So there's a page.
I thought we had, yeah.
There's a page, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different. Okay. There's one that has wood. I'm sorry, there are 2 that have wood.
Okay, I thought Scott, in previous discussions, I thought he had a frame already in-house, similar to others we've used, that he preferred. And I thought he was more interested in composite material rather than wood.
Well, that could be. This is just the frame.
Okay, okay.
Two-leg frame, 6 foot, 29 pounds, $143. It's the 25G26.
Well, I'm not sure what we right now need to do with this because the county has a donation policy. I provided all of the background of this to Chet last week. That prompted the scheduling of this has to go to the Buildings and Grounds Committee, our request, to the Buildings and Grounds Committee of the full county commission and get their recommendation to the full county commission that we accept this donation. And the dollar figure I put was, I think I said approximate because rather than not to exceed, in this case, but $500.
So it's already been forwarded to
Buildings and Grounds Committee of the
county commissioners.
county commissioners.
So we just wait for them?
We wait for approval and then it's really our decision on the style, the location, wood or plastic. As you and I had discussed once, really, it's kind of up to Scott in terms of the maintenance issue, whether we go with wood or composite and the fishing committee doesn't care.
So where's the monkey right now?
The monkeys,
Whose bag is it?
was last in Chet's hands going to the scheduling of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, and that's what we're waiting on, so I don't think we need to deal with much right
Do
here.
they meet monthly or?
As needed. They're still trying to schedule the meeting.
Okay,
I gave Chet a deadline of essentially the end of May, so we could get it in before the kids' fishing day.
got it.
Should one of us check and make sure it's on their agenda? And then all they gotta do is approve it? I mean, this is unbelievable what it takes,
Yeah. This is the new process that the county board of commissioners set up, and, yes, I think Laurel knows, I mean, it'll get on their agenda, correct? Yeah. Because I went over it all with Chet last week, sending the written out detail of what it is that we've approved, because we voted to approve this already. In terms of our recommendation to where it has to go from here. But the critical one is this Buildings and Grounds Committee, and he's pushing that. So I think we're good to go right now. Steve?
No actions required on our part.
No, not right now. And I don't think there will be, once we get this approval. I think it's up to really Scott to get the job moving along. Steve, you had something to say on this?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Next item here, parking lot entry design. John, correct me if I don't have the sequence of this quite right. Your discussion with County Road Commission led to our recognizing that they would prefer we have a narrower entrance. So John Walter then drew up the drawing that was up there on the table. I guess both of you have it. I know John, you've seen it. The drawing of a narrower entry and all the other features that go with it.
A short summary, when we met last month, we came up with a recommendation to put this in front of the county commissioners. We sent that recommendation to the Parks and Rec. We sent that information to Laurel, and it's gonna be on the agenda tomorrow to have the road commission replace that culvert under intergovernmental agreement. So since our last meeting, I met with the road commission. They came out and looked at it. they gave Laurel the letter that we're gonna take to the commission tomorrow. But they looked at it and they disagree with having a 100-foot culvert in there. They said it doesn't meet standards and it's unsafe when you don't have good control of people entering and leaving. And a normal entrance is 30 feet, like this drawing in front of us shows. So I met with John. He came up with a sketch to limit it to 30 feet. Then I took that sketch and met with Scott, because if this gets approved, we gotta know where to put that culvert in. And talking with him and John or whatever, it looks like that sign will have to come out and be put off to the side, which is no big deal. Then, once this thing's approved, we're gonna go out there then with Scott and some white paint and some markers and paint that present parking lot the way Scott wants it so that he can plow it. We're gonna keep it fairly wide. I'm not sure as wide as this sketch, but parking lot spaces now are deeper than 18 feet. You get pickups pulling in there and stuff. So we're gonna make the parking lot striped or parking deeper. We're gonna still have a nice place to turn around the bus, which kind of shows that radius there. And Scott can plow and push to your right, which is the east, in one continuous sweep. So as proposed, we're gonna have a 30-foot entrance. The culvert replacement won't be 100 feet. There's some this big interferences there that might cause concern. But other than that, once we get the agreement from the county commissioners, we got some painting to do, and we'll have to pull that sign out, because once that culvert goes in, the traffic flow is gonna change even if we don't pave a lot. So we gotta make sure that there's no barriers in there. And then we'll see when we can pave the lot next year or whatever. But that's what's happened since our last Veronica Valley meeting. We're on our way. It's ready to be done. We just gotta get approval. The parking lot doesn't have to look like that, but it's gonna be a nice wide parking lot.
Now, you're going before the Board of Commissioners first step tomorrow. That is relative specifically to the culvert replacement and engaging with the county commission.
Correct.
Okay, this is just a general question for whoever knows. If we like, county commission, road commission has really dictated our decision that we're gonna narrow the entrance.
Correct.
But the rest of this is really our decisioning that we've
And we
done
haven't
so
come
far.
up with,
Do we have to go in front of the county commission?
No.
The design of it? I know cost is gonna be a different issue, as it always is.
we will when it comes time then to go out for bid. And when we go out to bid, we'll go through this committee and the Parks and Rec committee, saying here's how it's gonna be fabricated. Here's, you're gonna have roll part edges, you're gonna have this is how wide it's gonna be. This is what we got. And at that time, then we'll come up with some type of bidding spec, which may not be done till next year, because this is gonna cost about 20 grand. So we don't have money this year. So this is just an idea. What we gotta have is that we gotta put in a narrower culvert this year.
Yeah, that I understand. I was wondering about, for example, do we have to get permission from the county commissioners to make the thing smaller than it is right now?
They're just gonna see the proposed bids that go out. And that sketch will be in there. Some type of sketch will be in there.
in terms of width, I think John's determination of how wide he's drawn this comes from his knowledge about what it takes to turn a school bus in there comfortably, with cars perhaps in the middle.
And I think he did a fine job there. It could be narrow, or a school bus could pull into a parking place and back up if it wanted to on the far end. We'll work that all out here over the upcoming months. How we want it laid out.
Steve, any question, thought?
No.
That's just an update.
No, it looks to be, good that we narrow the entrance to the parking lot for safety. And, it's hard to argue that, so, I guess we're doing it, and I think it's good. It'll be different, but, I think it's gonna be a good change.
I'll add that we might go ask the county commissioners if they want to take some unspent funds this year. And then say, you guys want to pay it this year because here's an estimate. And they might say, yeah, go ahead. But you don't know. Should we spend it this year or next year?
If we get to that point, we don't know if we don't ask. And frankly, I'm gonna need some, Steve, we're gonna have other pieces from the full Parks and Rec Commission in terms of budgeting for next year. The budgeting talks I've been involved in have really been about, just small tweaks to the previous budget. We're talking about some larger projects here, bigger dollars. There are gonna be considerations of how we present that in our budget requests, I presume. We'll have to talk about that.
Right.
Now, Don Ferg, I think this was just yesterday, pointed out that in the current budget, capital expenditure and maintenance totals $80,000. So.
For Parks and Rec.
For Parks and Rec, yeah, just Parks and Rec budget. So isn't that sort of a good representation of like the money we have to spend on maintenance and project in the current budget? But is $80,000 a total number we can work with to figure out how much we do have this year? I mean, once we figure out what it's gonna cost in miles.
You might want a discussion with accounting staff to get a better idea.
Right, and Scott, we have that maintenance, up to 30,000. And we need to have Scott weigh in as to, the appropriateness of that number for maintenance. What categories, was he thinking, when we set that number? And we'll just have to touch base with him and see what that number represents as far as projects or where it will fit. I know that we do have a bottom line accounting practice with Parks and Rec. And we've been careful not to go into the red. We have had a history of having money left on the table, so anyway, we'll need a discussion with that, and Laurel's right, I think, too, the accounting department will weigh in.
And that would be with Jen?
Yes.
Jen should bring it, but we should discuss that at the Parks and Rec, correct?
You can ask her.
Well, John, I guess the thought that's in my head is I have never, as a commissioner, I've never had a sense of, well, how much money do we, the three parks, have in total in any one of our budgets to, well, pay for Savin Lake Services, to pay for the culvert, to pay to clean up the trees. How much of this year's budget are we running through with just that? What do we have left? I've never had that kind of number in my head, that, oh, the three parks together have about this much to spend each year.
Well, we'll see.
But
I think that maintenance fee is different than the capital projects, correct?
yes. I mean, there are two line items in the budget.
And this culvert is failing, and we could call this maintenance if we need to, but the whole thing rides on what is Miles Kimberly gonna do. And
Yeah.
we're already getting into our second quarter.
Yep.
And, I'm ready to spend money.
Well, on the agenda, my intent was with both this discussion of the narrow entrance to the parking lot, this redesign, and the culvert, I don't think there's any more action required right now. I will say, John Walter texted me on Saturday indicating that all flights have been canceled because of the volcano. So they don't know when they're getting out of there, and whether they'll get out on an airplane or have to take the time to cruise home. I'm not sure how that's gonna go. I don't think they knew.
Where are they?
In St. Lucia,
Where that volcano is,
they're on the island right next to St. Vincent, which is where Soufriere flew up.
I'll be there.
So there is no air travel through that part of the Windward Islands because
he's getting a different kind of tan.
So he did say, he indicated in the text, let him know how our discussion goes today and that he already had additional thoughts in the narrowing design, the design of the narrower entrance to a parking lot. So we're not done with it. So but we're on the right track because, John, you're all set for tomorrow then, or for that
I am.
request? Okay. So I would move on here unless there's more discussion, invasive weed management spray plan. I hoped I didn't move on it quick enough to have an aerial photo for the three of us to look at, each of us, from Rob Herman, but he's been on vacation and won't be back till Thursday, so I didn't get that done. But the question is, I'm gonna begin talking with Savin Lake Services this week about how do we make sure we have a mixture of some weedy areas and good clear areas for fishing in the ponds, not wiping out everything. What, do you have any, clearly the deep water, so if you're approaching the pond and the old putting green, the semicircle peninsula that sticks out there, the deep water that's there and left in that left lobe, that we would like open, I presume, because it's number one fishing. Well, my thought is around the bridge, drop down fishing. With that main shoreline from the parking lot around the bridge, I don't think we need to do other parts of that upper pond much.
Are you talking about spraying the water or spraying our ground?
Water. I mean, we've hired Savin to one more year to give us that management.
Good.
I'm just looking right now for any thoughts you two might have about, because I haven't yet, just been waiting until we get closer. Talk with Paul, well, we did last fall. I made it clear what our goal was. And he said, yes, we can do that, et cetera. But now I want to find out what the plan is. I was there when they sprayed last year, and it's a large volume of liquid water, or most of it, going in. Can they spray it in a more controlled area, hit and miss, have it patchy with weeds? I don't know that detail, but I just wondered what your thoughts are. I know we want that deeper water and drop down fishing from both the bridge and from the side to be clear access, because that's where most of the fishing goes on. And if we have weeds off in other places, then we've got the habitat covered.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think it could be even on the, if you go north from the putting green, to that arm of the pond, you could do a couple of spots or maybe even 3 spots for 3 little open areas.
Okay.
Um, and you know, it just seems to me that, if they have the capability, then using your best judgment as to, you know, where fishing happens and how can we make this, optimum, I think would be good. You've been at Kids Fish Day enough to know, I haven't.
Yeah, I've attended 2 of them, so. If it results in us having, in effect, some extra spray to use, I'm gonna certainly think about putting it on the back pond,
Again, with strips,
patchy,
yeah.
okay? So I'm on the right.
Yeah, I'd say go for
So the next step there, I will be doing, and that is, beginning that conversation, that plan in detail with Savin Lake Services. So I'll report on that at our next meeting.
Thank you.
No other discussion there. Let's see, was one other point on that. Oh, yes. All along, we've talked that I felt comfortable that we needed to start with chemical spray because we were really overwhelmed with that milfoil. But we've talked about getting control of it, getting a handle on it, and then moving away from spray. Lonnie Rodemaker from the Kids Fishing Committee has urged me a couple of times, and I haven't done it yet, to talk with Brian Price, the former head of the Conservancy and now the Fishing Committees for the Leelanau Lake Association's biologist. I don't know if you saw the ticker this morning, but they had an article on the plans for using the tarps. And it's a burlap type tarp that they lay on the bottom of the lake in selected areas to manage the milfoil. Brian, through Lonnie, has said, we got a lot of tarps. If you want to use some and experiment, play around with that control method for the ponds, they have tarp availability. Now, I'm not talking this year. I'm not talking like getting this organized for this Kids Fish Day or anything, but on into the future, I think we can look at some of that kind of patchy control, especially with the narrowness of the ponds. Now, one thing I've talked with Lonnie about this twice and emphasized, this is where we would really want your group to organize manpower, volunteer manpower, to help with that tarp placement and pull out. So, I haven't talked with Brian. I should have, I will. I'll have some report on that. But that's just looking ahead, at something beyond spray for subsequent years. That was my only other point.
I know that, they are looking at, Eagle permitting for that process in Lake Leelanau. It seems like they were unaware that they needed, permitting.
Would we on our ponds?
That's where I'm heading. I would imagine if they needed permitting in the lake, we'd need permitting in the pond.
Wow.
There is a permit that they get for the spraying.
Yeah.
So, that's another factor. And I'd like Heather to weigh in. And I know when I presented to the county board, I was, quizzed on the possibility of dredging for weed control, and I'd like to run that by Heather also, assuming she's gonna be at the meeting this month.
Dredging still is Savin's #1 solution with the longest impact. Was scrape the bottom off the ponds. Now, Is there any way we can get some estimate of just ballpark of what kind of cost that's gonna be? I mean, is it even reasonable to discuss it?
Tarps or dredging?
No, dredging.
For the size of our pond, I personally like the chemical approach, which we have Heather on our side. These barriers with that burlap, I think are fine, but Lake Leelanau has got square miles and square miles of this, and Eagle is concerned with stuff getting trapped. If we put these mats along our ponds and we cover up that 100-year-old turtle and any other turtles, you're not gonna like it. But I am a firm believer of using that chemical stuff on the size of pond that we got. And it's the simplest and easiest. I don't think you'd have to involve Eagle, but Heather is behind it. And that would require a lot less paperwork and everything.
Well, thanks for that, because, I mean, just in terms of, this is the kind of decisioning we're gonna have to make after this year. But I'm gonna investigate with Brian Price, some of what those tarps are all about. Savin actually provides that service as well.
Well, the tarps are available if you want to use them.
The, Dave, can you, when you're talking with Savin, flesh out what their idea of dredging is? You know, you just said scrape off the bottom, so if we're gonna have somebody come and give a ballpark estimate of what we're thinking about, are we taking 6 inches off the bottom?
Got
Are we taking 8 inches off the bottom? Each inch will add a certain amount of money, and then we need to figure out where the material would go. And Savin probably has an idea of where the spoils would go from a dredging, what kind of specifications would be involved with that. You'd have fragments of all the milfoil in it. So, you know, where do you put such a thing? And, you know, if we did dredge, could we place the spoils somewhere on the property that would be appropriate?
Scott thinks so, and Paul Barber's answer to, when I expressed, it seemed to me I had heard part of the issue with earlier discussions here was what do we do with the spoils, so the dredging, so I said something about that to Paul Barber, and he said, well, we never have problems getting rid of that. Any farmer around who understands what it is wants it. He says it's high-grade fertilizer, in effect. But Scott has said already that he thinks the places we have on the park for disposing of it. So I will ask, in terms of when you say excavate the bottom, Savin, how deep?
How much?
I'll get that, and I'll have that at our next meeting. So we can look at
If
that.
I know the commissioners want to look at one, requested that for next season, we have that number to show them.
They've already requested that.
They requested a number, yeah, when I was in front of them with the Savin Lake.
Okay, well then I need to get this number. I'll get it to you.
Yeah, then we'll have to have somebody take a look and give us a quote or a ballpark or something between now and, well, the next time we report to the County Board of Commissioners. That'll be in early part of next year then, at some point. We aren't scheduled yet, but
Well, scheduled yet for what?
A report. They're gonna want that number at some point.
Okay,
When I just was in front of them with the Savin Lake contract, and that whole discussion happened, and there was one member that didn't like chemicals, and then two members wondered about dredging.
okay, well, I'll start with this, I'll get it to, really to both of you, so we can figure out who do we know that can know that number, how deep do we have to go, look at the ponds and give us some sort of number to start with.
And if we can just to get a number, we would be putting it somewhere on the park. You know, that'd be.
Yeah, just to get a number. I'll get that. I'll talk to Paul about that specifically, because I kind of dismissed it in previous discussions with him, based on what I had heard previously. Okay, I think we're done with that. Weed management, okay. Number 5 on the agenda, Grand Traverse Band 2% allocation request, full application from Bill Watson. Bill asked once I said, how big a request are you gonna make? And he said, well, how big should I make? I passed on to him that we'd like to keep it sort of in the ballpark of last year's request, 12,000. I guess for political reasons. The full request is 22,000. The full project is 50,000, but he already has the match to, the full planning outlines here is divided between 48% funded by the tribe's 2% allocation, 52% funded by the match. The match isn't from the county. It's from 2 other organizations two other sources that he identifies that he's already connected with to provide the local match to satisfy the tribe. This I have now, Laura will get the electronics. I will be taking this in front of the county commission in the May meetings, because the application is due in May to the tribe.
I make a motion that we recommend to the Parks and Rec Commission to follow through with the 2% grant application provided by Bill Watson for the project of invasive eradication at Veronica Valley Park.
I'll second that. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Will do. It includes the goats. I've been, on my hikes, I've been picturing where to recommend to them they set up their paddocks. I think there's an area where we can do it. I'll do it certainly in consultation too, in terms of where will they be effective? Do they see a place where, well, if we did it back there, they'd really clean up this whole. But what I've been looking at is some extension of the prairie, to bring it forward a little towards the fishing ponds just because it can be beautiful. I mean, it can look good from the road. They could actually, I think the goats could actually do what Scott did with mowing the year before we actually seeded, before we did any spray and then seeded. I think the goats could do all that mowing very effectively, extending a ton of one of those strips of prairie. So all of that's what we'll look at. Talk with Scott and the goat people when that time comes.
Sounds good.
Any question on that?
I do. Are you gonna make sure this is on the agenda for Parks and Recs next week? Because we need their approval to send it to the board.
That's what my motion was.
Yes.
But your motion didn't include the words Parks and Rec. I think you said to the commission.
Well,
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec Commission, he made a recommendation, because then that body makes a recommendation.
So the minutes are gonna say it to the Parks and Rec.
Yes.
That's next week, and I'll present this to the Parks and Rec Commission then next week. have the recommendation and the document paperwork
To go to the county board.
for the county board.
Yeah.
Okay, if nothing more on that, we'll move on to Friends of Veronica Valley Park. I have said several times and actually put it in part of the second grant application that part of our plan should be to get a volunteer structure. Friends of a Park, sort of structure. I think that's something we can pull off this year. Kama Ross really has shown the way with the tree planting, a couple of tree planting projects that she's done at the park, and organizing volunteers. She has quite a list, and she's very successful in putting out the invitation and getting people there. I was amazed. I worked at 2 of the 3 last year. I was amazed at both of those sessions. There were 3 people who don't live in the county. One lives over on Old Mission Peninsula, but she likes volunteering to do stuff, and she's gotten to know Kama, and she likes what Kama does. We had a couple, because of COVID, had bought a motorhome, an RV, and as the gentleman said to me, he was really, the whole thing for him was when he got to British Columbia, because he was gonna fish. But they were traveling the country on their way to British Columbia for a year or longer, and they would go wherever the communities they wanted into. If they found a volunteer thing like this, they did it. It was fun of it. So, and that came through Kama's outreach and her. So, at Kids Fishing Day, I'm gonna have a booth. And announce an organization of the Friends of Veronica Valley Park. The Kids Fishing Committee itself will provide some manpower, but I think working with Scott, we can come up with a kind of an evergreen list of volunteer projects that are kind of always there each year. And organized as Kama does, and Kama's going to be involved, she's really behind this. Organize at least a couple of volunteer sessions of a couple hours each to get some projects done, even if it's just to keep the volunteers active each year, even if it's not a critical need. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to report, is that effort's gonna go on, because I think that can be useful. John?
There was a nice resume of applicants that was turned in to the county commissioners to get appointed towards Parks and Rec. I remember a couple candidates just jumped right out at me. That list, maybe Laurel has it, that list, those names and address and phone numbers is a good place to start.
Excellent idea.
There were some fantastic people with backgrounds on there.
Do we still have that information?
Does any formal action need to be taken with this concept?
I don't have anything else.
Make sure that you garner Kama's list. She's retiring in October.
What?
Who?
No.
Kama.
Well, okay, then I'll just put her in charge of the Friends group.
But I mean, she's probably willing to share that list with you.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and it's as much her experience and her energy and how she's just got stuff to share about how to work with volunteers, how to get them enthusiastic. So we'll build on that through the course of this year. And it'd be really nice if we went into next year and had that concept structured something. We're on to public comment again, if we have any.
The number to call in for public comment is 231-256-8109.
Any other comments, commissioners? John, Steve? John?
I wish I'd have put this on the agenda, but I'd like it to be put on our agenda for the next Veronica Valley. Has to do with that safety walkway around the pond. I have met with an engineer, this is only a comment, not a discussion. I had met with an engineer, and we came up with a real good design and bid to come around that thing, and the cost is real low. And I met with Scott where to dump some of that fill. And I would like that to be on our agenda and show you what's proposed. This guy came up with some real good ideas instead of, for an example, instead of a 4-foot walkway, make it 7 so that I can take a do-more around there, and he'd have that whole thing prepared in an hour. Or if you gotta do it narrower, you're gonna have shoveling and stuff like that. And I'd like to propose that. We can't do anything until after Kids Fish Day, but if it looks good for this committee and for parks, we should move forward with that. And the other reason for moving forward, again, this is a long comment, is if we're gonna make a mess there, we gotta make a mess there this summer prior to doing anything with that parking lot. That's my comment.
Well, that's a valuable comment. So noted, it will be on May's agenda. I guess I didn't put it on today's agenda, John. I had thought about it too earlier, but
This all took place since our last meeting.
yeah, exactly. And we had enough other things to keep it short. We're gonna be on time here. That's good. I didn't have this on the agenda. Can we do it in our commissioner comment? Are either of you gonna be gone in May? I gotta schedule a meeting for May. I look at preferences right now. And no earlier than 11 o'clock for Steve.
Yeah, and that'll take Scott out of the picture, because he typically goes out to whichever park. He could start his day here or maybe end his day here.
Okay.
Midday for him is hard, so, you might think about changing the time up a bit, and I'll be here or I won't be here. Which is kind of,
cherries and maize.
which is kind of the case now.
Yeah.
I don't mind early meetings at 9 o'clock. I don't know what Laurel thinks of it.
It depends on the day.
Right now, it looks like I'm okay for 9 o'clock meetings anyplace.
Okay.
You could say 9:30, because the building starts at 9. Everybody here starts at 9 except for a couple offices. So if you're gonna set a time early, 9:30 is probably a good time for the building, and everybody that works here. You set it for me, do an 11, but it's up to you.
What if, well, John Walter, I think, likes the first thing in the morning. I mean, it kind of start the day or finish the day. What if availability was such that it was later in the afternoon? That suit you?
That, like I try to make any meeting day in time. You might want to chat with Scott, and I saw him this morning briefly, and he was just mentioning that the midday is hard for him. So I don't.
Okay.
That would be a Scott question. I'm
Okay.
gonna try to get him here.
Well, I think it's gonna head towards then a 9:30. And if you can, be here. If you can't,
Yeah.
we'll stay in touch. Okay.
Yeah. fine.
The other thing I thought worked pretty good, Dave, was right before the Parks meeting on Wednesday. Scott's usually here for that, Steve is, so am I. We could have a 1:30 meeting and get over with at 2:30. Because that afternoon is ruined anyway. But we'd have to check and see the availability.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because we've done that before, and I like it as well.
Well, yeah,
I like it as well.
my day is shot that afternoon.
A couple of times I haven't planned it that way because I knew it was gonna take us longer, but,
Right,
we're gonna be pretty square in the next meeting too,
so
so.
this one just took an hour.
Right,
And you went
exactly.
through the briefing and stuff.
Exactly, so I may head towards that,
All right,
that time slot immediately prior to the next full commission.
I don't know, can Laura call the agenda? What does it look like?
Oh,
Or the room reservations?
I'll check, I'll do all that first. Laurel's told me the planning steps and she'll make it. So. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.